Hello, everybody. This is Tetrafolium. About to tell you guys about our second draft league, or well, I guess technically our third, but the second one that I'm gonna be posting to YouTube. The Turn 17 Rock Season 2. Um, Now we have a new uh, emblem to, or I guess you could call it a logo, to represent our draft league. I made it very shoddily in Photoshop, as I tend to do with like all my thumbnails and everything. Um, and yeah, I'm gonna be talking about all the draft teams and my thoughts on them. There was a version of this recording that I did with my now roommate. If you remember him from last league, Ephemeral, or the captain of the downtown Dragapults, or sorry, was his team the first time? It was Anne Orlando Azus. That's right. Um, but the reason why I'm having to re-record this is because we had audio issues that time. I think we're going to not use that setup again, um, or tweak it in some way so that that doesn't happen again. Um, but yeah, I guess I'll go through and hit all the bullet points. One thing I guess I should explain is that we were using the Shuckle Premier League. If you know what that is, that's PokeMMD's draft league that he's been doing the past couple months, using their draft board and their fan doc uh, to construct our things. We obviously changed some things, like for example, we only have 12 players to their 14, so we changed that in the Google Sheets. We um, added in the new DLC Pokemon onto our draft board, and then we readjusted some of the Pokemon that we didn't think were quite at the right level for how we wanted to play. Um, Maybe I'll do a video later showing how you can manipulate stuff like that in the Google Sheet for your particular draft league if you want to do that. But for now, let's just focus on uh, the season 2 draft picks. So let's start with the person who had the first overall pick. That was uh, the We're Not Beating Anybody, captained by Dion. Um, he was the captain of, I believe, the Macon Steppas. That was their name in the first league. So glad to have him back. Uh, with the first overall pick, he took Walking Wake. I don't know how strong a first pick that is, especially if you're not going to draft Torkoal or Ninetales right after. Um, but like, I guess it's not the worst pick. 16 points is somewhat expensive. The most expensive was 19, and there were some really, really good Pokemon at 19 points, like Dragapult and Iron Valiant and Urshifu Rapid Strike, um, just to name a few. But you don't. There's no harm in taking a Pokemon that is not exactly the most expensive if you're going to construct a good team around it. I think that this team is pretty good. It's got some really good individual Pokemon like Walking Wake, Cinderace, Zarude. They're all pretty fast. You have good pivoting options like through Cinderace, Lando, Zarude. Um, and you have like okay hazards. Frogadier gets spikes, Lando gets rocks, Muck gets T-spikes, and you have the best spin blocker in the game with Goldengo. That all being said, I think that it maybe would have behooved this team to pick a better dedicated hazard setter. Like if Landorus was, for example, Gliscor or Ting-Lu, that would make this team a lot better. Now, granted, I don't think that this team had much of an option to pick those because those were pretty early drafts. Um, but even something like Um, and there are not that many Pokemon that get rocks and spikes now that I'm thinking about it. But Whiscash is an option for. It was worth 2 points. It wasn't drafted until very late. Um, Could have been something that would have helped with the spike stacking strategy. Rabombi would have been a good one if you wanted sticky web. I don't know if this team necessarily needs sticky web, but um, yeah, that's sort of a microcosm of the larger issue with this team. I don't think there's not really great synergy here. Like, you do have a Firewater Grass Core with Walking Wake, Cinderace, and Zarude, and they're all decently strong hitters, but like they're not really defensive Pokemon. They don't really want to switch in on even resisted hits because they're liable to get 2 or 3 hit KO'd, like even by resisted hits. Um, they're also pretty like they're decently fast, but they're not like Iron Boulder levels. They're not um, like Booster Iron Valiant levels. So you're possibly going to struggle against those really quick matchups. Granted, everybody's going to struggle against those, but on a team with not great speed control, just pretty good speed tiers, that is something that you need to be concerned about. And then probably the thing that is the biggest problem on this team for me is that you don't really have a good defensive core. Zapdos and Lando are decent defensive Pokemon, but together they're not great. They share an ice weakness. They don't have a lot of different resistances. Usually, with your defensive Pokemon, you want one that resists this subset of types and the other resisting a fairly different subset of types. Um, Fairy and Steel tend to go well together, for example. Um, because Fairy resists things like fighting, um, and well, it's a fairly good neutral type, whereas Steel is going to get a lot of the things that would be super effective on Fairy, like Steel and Poison, and also has its own sets of resistances. There are plenty of other types, like that's why Fire and Water Grass is a decent core. They all have a pretty good variety of resistances. But anyway, um, yeah, I just don't see like great defensive Pokemon, and the ones that are pretty good defensive Pokemon don't like cover each other's weaknesses that well. Um, so I have a feeling that if this team doesn't stick up with its momentum, it's probably going to be forced to sack a lot of its guys, and that's probably not going to be conducive for consistent victories. Um, So maybe this "we're not beating anybody" is accurate. I hope not. I hope it's a good team. We could talk about the Terra Captains real quick. I think they're all not good. um, Ursaring's probably the best of the bunch. I could see Ursaring maybe if it gets some bulk ups under its belt, going Terra normal and getting a crazy facade off. If it's Guts, if it's Eviolite, I mean, it gets decent fighting coverage, so it could manage to get extra damage with that. Fairies and Oak is a pretty good defensive Terra type, but we're also talking about Ursaring, who's like not really that threatening. I don't know. Maybe it's gonna smash me and I'll eat my words, but it's not great. Frogadier as a Terra captain, I mean, it might be able to snag uh, a surprise KO with that lineup, but I don't expect it to be very impactful other than like maybe getting one pick. Muck, it's not great. Poison is already a decent enough defensive type. I don't think you really care to switch out of it, and you're not doing much with offensive Muck. So yeah, I've said a lot of not great things about this team. I think it's still pretty playable. Just I think it's going to be a little hard to play with, and that maybe there could have been some things done to improve the draft. In any case, we'll move on to the second overall pick. This is the January Sixers, which is an insane name. Probably a more insane logo. What is that? A goldfish burning down the Capitol building? That's insane. Um, this team is really strong. I think probably the first thing that stands out to you is that Chi Yu. Chi Yu is probably the best specially defensive or specially oriented breaker in the game. I really can't think of another one that even comes close. Beads of Ruin is an insane ability. Uh, Choice Specs damage, like you can't take this thing on with neutral threats. Um, yeah, so it's gonna be pretty tough to deal with. Thankfully, Chi-Yu is only somewhat fast. I think it's base 95 or it's base 100. I'm not sure. Um, there are plenty of Pokemon that are faster than base 100 that have moves to threaten Chi-Yu out because it is fairly frail too. It's only got base 50 HP and not great defenses. Um, so that is something, but you're definitely a really tough Pokemon to switch into. Uh, we have. I'm gonna skip Gliscor and go down to Rillaboom. Rillaboom plus Chi-Yu is really, really strong. Rillaboom can remove a lot of the water types from the equation, uh, which are the things that Chi-Yu will struggle to hit the most because it wants to spam its fire attacks. It's got really strong overheats and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, Rillaboom's really good for that. It's also good defensively for Chi-Yu because the grassy terrain will reduce the power of some ground type moves, namely Earthquake, which might let Chi-Yu live an Earthquake. And Chi-Yu living a hit and smashing back on another turn is just not good. Another Pokemon that pairs really well with Rillaboom is Sneasler. Sneasler's got Unburdened, and it loves to use an item that is easily consumed, like Grassy Seed, to give it a +1 defense boost, and then it'll effectively be double speed because of Unburdened, and then it's going to snowball out of control on your team. It's going to spam Dire Claw and get all the hacks that it needs to win the game. It's a really fucked up Pokemon, and it's kind of insane that we kept it at 16 points. But it is what it is. If it makes us regret it, then he makes us regret it. Rillaboom fell to fourth pick for this team. Plenty of other people had an opportunity to steal Rillaboom and stop this crazy synergy. Um, but anyway, the rest of the team is also just pretty solid. Gliscor's a good defensive pivot Pokemon. It's also like a potential stall breaker because it gives itself its own status, so it's effectively immune. And Poison Heal heals a lot of HP. It's an 8th instead of a 16th that we're used to with leftovers. Um, it gets strong options like Swords Dance, Facade, Earthquake. Might get Dual Wing Beat as well. I'm not sure, but it's also got like the defensive options like Toxic itself, and uh, really good hazard stacking potential with access to spikes and stealth rocks. I don't know if it gets toxic spikes. It might, but yeah, really, really powerful Pokemon. Regieleki is a Pokemon that has a very obvious weakness in that it really struggles to hit ground type Pokemon. But when you have Pokemon like Rillaboom on your team to threaten and pressure ground types, Regieleki is a really good option for pair up with Rillaboom. Regieleki also deals well with water types. There are very few water types in the game that would love to take a Thunderbolt from a Specs Aleki. And the more water types that are gone, the better Chi-Yu gets. Primarina is also good at dealing with ground types. It's also good at dealing with fighting types that potentially could come into Mach Punch a Chi-Yu. Yeah, this is a really well constructed top six. Corviknight is a consistent Pokemon, good hazard removal, um, fits in decent with the team. Like, it's just solid, no complaints. If I am going to complain about anything with this team, I think the low tier picks, these 9 and down single digit Pokemon, which are allowed to be Terra Captains, by the way, you have up to 15 points with them, so that's 733. He used 13 of them. Um, he doesn't have a super strong Pokemon in this group of three. Hisuian Decidueye is probably the strongest, and it's got a decent spread of types here. Fighting is good for extra triple arrows damage. Ghost is okay. I mean, it's a spin blocker type. Um, it's the only spin blocker type, really. But it's not bad. I think it might get Shadow Shackle, Spirit Shackle, whatever the regular Decidueye signature move is. So maybe it could be useful for that. Steel is a pretty good defensive type. I think it's a good pairing with a grass type because grass is resistant to earthquake already. So if you go into a steel type, you can deal with all the Pokemon that are not ground types pretty well. Granted, it does have an overlapping weakness with fire, but you know, it's not perfect, but whatever. Dusclops, as a Terra Captain, what are you really gonna do with it? A defensive option would have been kind of nice, like Fairy or Water. But I guess this guy is looking to throw off, I don't know, Focus Blast or Aura Spheres with the fighting and Ice Beams with the ice. Could maybe come through. I do think that with these low tier Pokemon, that offensive options tend to be better than defensive ones because their base stats are pretty low usually, so they don't tend to get a lot of great utility out of being a defensive Terra type. They still die in like 1 or 2 hits from even neutral hits. There are some exceptions, of course, but um, yeah, there are very few Pokemon in like the 3 points and lower who are going to be good defensive mons. Um, Spidops is interesting. Uh, you might say that this team, other than Regieleki, doesn't seem, and Sneasler doesn't seem ridiculously fast. I mean, that it's like taking out the top 2 guys on a team and then saying the team's not fast is not really saying much. But uh, you could see a case where somebody is setting up sticky webs against this team, and maybe you didn't bring Corviknight, or you did, or your Corviknight is not going to be in a good position to remove those hazards. Spidops is pretty decent as a way to set up your own sticky webs and either force the opponent to defog away their own or just have to play with everybody being -1 speed. Um, so I think that's actually a pretty good pick, especially as a last pick. There definitely are some people who have sticky web access on their team. So um, I like having the option to say, no, I don't want to lose to sticky webs. I think overall this is a really good team. Now, there's no accounting for the player, so we can't guarantee that this player is going to pop off and go crazy and be regular season MVP. But with a team like this, he certainly has the tools to be that. And that's the important part. That's what we're trying to look at in this video. With the third overall pick, we have the Big White Cookies, manned by my son from last week, if you are familiar with that joke. In any case, the Big White Cookies has probably, arguably, the most valuable Pokemon that you could pick in Draft League with Iron Valiant, there's definitely an argument for Dragapult, and I think probably more people would say Dragapult because it has so many more options because it's so fast. But Iron Valiant with the booster energy, the boosted speed, and its fairy fighting dual coverage is really strong. It's also a good mixed attacker. It's also a good just put it all into uh, special attack and throw on the choice specs, or throw it all into attack and click Swords Dance Pokemon. Yeah, really good. In a league like this where we have item clause, it can sometimes be competing for booster energy, but this team only has one Paradox Pokemon. So, like, you're not really struggling to figure out an item for this guy. Um, it's a really good pick. Ting Lu, I think, is also a good partner for Iron Valiant. Yes, they both are weak to Fairy, but Iron Valiant's main weakness is its low special defense, and Ting Lu is one of the best specially defensive walls in the game. You could do Blissey as well, but Ting Lu is a lot less passive. It gets a lot more progress because it's a great hazard setter. Gets rocks and spikes. And I think that Ting Lu can hit some Pokemon that Iron Valiant might be struggling against. Like, for example, Poison resists both of the types, or both of Valiant stab types. So Ting Lu's decently strong Earthquake uh, is threatening those. So I think that's a good pair. Metagross is a Pokemon that got quite a few buffs in this DLC, but I'm a little skeptical of it. It has kind of fallen off starting since Gen 6 when Steel type got nerfed with its losing its resistance to Dark and Ghost. So a lot of Pokemon can hit Metagross for super effective damage now. That being said, Bullet Punch is a good priority move. It gets rocks. It can be a booster type Pokemon. It works pretty well with weakness policy because it has a decent number of weaknesses, but it is fairly bulky and is likely to survive. It's a little slow, but agility is, I don't know if it gets rock polish anymore, but it does still get agility, so that is something for it. Meteor Mash is a good move. Psychic isn't the best offensive type. It's also not a great defensive type. It's just not a great type, I guess. But um, it's okay. I don't know if I can't think of any Pokemon that immediately jumps out to me as, oh, I would definitely rather take this for 13 points that fills the role of Metagross. But um, I digress. Moltres is good. It's very boots reliant, and that's why it could be a pitfall type of pick in a item clause league like this. But I haven't seen any Pokemon on this board that like are in dire need of the boots. So I don't hate Moltres as a pick. Uh, it's threatening to burn a lot of things, which is really good. Like a burned Pokemon against Ting Lu is really going to struggle to do damage. Um, and anything to stop a potential breaker against this Iron Valiant team is good. I like it. It's not great because it doesn't have defog anymore. If it did have defog, it'd be a lot more useful. But it still gets U-turn, still gets uh, okay fire type coverage, okay flying type coverage. I mean, I guess you're kind of stuck with Air Slash because you don't get Hurricane for some reason. But pretty decent Pokemon. Palafin is a scary Pokemon. Switch it in, then switch out, then it's back in with a base 160 attack stat. That's massive. Um, it's got really strong water type moves to go with it, like Wave Crash, 120 base power. Really hard to find a good switch in to Palafin. Um, you're probably going to need a bulky water, and not a water ground type. But yeah, or maybe a dragon type. Um, that is the one thing about Palafin, is that it is fairly limited in its coverage. It mostly gets water and fighting type moves, so if you could find Jellicent somewhere on this draft board, it doesn't exist, by the way, then you have a Palafin answer, but other than that, yeah, it's really strong. I think it's also nice that it's one of its main attacking moves, Jet Punch, is priority, and it's pretty strong priority too, base 60. It covers for an Iron Valiant that doesn't get its booster anymore. If you need to KO something that is faster than Val, Palafin is a good option. Flip Turn is also great for getting momentum. Ogerpon Cornerstone is a weird Pokemon. Grass Rock is a strange type. It's only really on things like Cradily, which is not in this generation. Um, and it wasn't great for Cradily. It was a kind of mediocre defensive type, maybe even subpar, but that's not really what you care about Ogerpon for. You care about it as this sort of offensive pivot type Pokemon, and I think having a 100% accurate rock type move and grass coverage is pretty sufficient for what it needs to do. I think it's good, just a good Pokemon. Miss Magius as a Terra Captain is probably one of the better options as a Terra Captain. I like Terra Ghost for extra Shadow Ball damage. I like Terra Electric because it's just good coverage, and also Miss Magius gets Levitate, so you'll have effectively no weaknesses. Now, it's not the most bulky Pokemon, so I wouldn't look at that as a slam dunk. You're gonna never take tons of damage from any move, but still good. And then Fairy is just a pretty solid option. Miss Magius, I believe, gets Moonblast, so boosted Moonblasts are really good. If it doesn't get Moonblast, it definitely gets Dazzling Gleam, and it might also get Alluring Voice, so um, all good Fairy options. Skunk Tank, I like it. I think it's a good Pokemon. Agent Stinker was on my team and pulled through in a lot of games for me last season. It's a grounded poison type, so it can absorb toxic spikes. It gets access to Sucker Punch, Stab, Sucker Punch even. So it can be threatening against certain Pokemon like Dragapult. Now, granted, it's not like the best Dragapult answer in the game, but it gives you some utility against it, that's for sure. It gets toxic spikes of its own. It lost Defog, which sucks, but it is pretty solid. Tauros is, I think, not a great Pokemon. It's got a decent speed tier at 110. Outspeeds quite a bit, actually, but its offensive stats are not fantastic. I think it's 110, 120, 100, somewhere in that ballpark attack, which is okay if you're boosting, but Tauros doesn't really have great boosting options, and even if it did, its defenses are a little suspect for getting a good boost setup sweep. I do like its coverage for fighting and ground. Um, it hits it; those two types hit a lot of key Pokemon, especially Steel types, which Tauros would struggle to hit with its stab. Um, so it's definitely a Pokemon that can put in some work, and I like its abilities, namely Intimidate. Um, so definitely not a bad pick. Uh, Last is Bellybolt, which is a weird Pokemon. It's, I guess, good at removing bulky waters in theory for Palafin. So could be good. Um, but I don't really see it that often. It doesn't really get a lot of good coverage. It gets Toxic, which is one of the few non-poison type Pokemon that gets it. Um, it's okay. I think this team is pretty solid as well. I could see it doing well. Kind of the same issue I brought up with the first team we talked about. I don't really see a ton of great defensive utility. The defensive core of Moltres and Ting Lu is okay as long as you're not facing a water type. And I think that's probably the sticking point for this team is that it does struggle quite a bit against water types. Palafin is not going to hit most water types as effectively as other types. Um, Ting Lu and Moltres do not want to switch into water type moves. Your main form of removal of water types is going to be Belly Bolt, maybe also Mismagius with Terra Electric. You don't really have any good grass types per se. I guess you have Ogerpon actually. So, but Ogerpon is one of the few grass types that is not resistant to water, so it's not always a great switch in. I could see something like Manaphy picking up a lot of kills against this team. So definitely watch out for that if you are the big white cookies. But other than that, I think it is a pretty good team. Next up is me, the Aurora Starstorm. This is in reference to me moving very, very far away from my coastal state to a Midwest state. I don't know what I would call Colorado. Yeah, I guess I just doxed myself there. Anyway, will have a video talking about my draft team in more particular details. So I definitely encourage you to watch that, especially if you're one of my opponents, because maybe I'm going to leak strategies because I get excited talking about my team and I don't think about what I'm saying. But like, at least in comparison to other teams, I think this team has decent speed tiers. Roaring Moon 119, Terapagos and Galvantula 108. Those are pretty good. There are a lot of Pokemon like Jirachi who are base 100 or maybe just like slightly faster, like Garchomp, which is 102. And being able to outspeed those is really good. It's not the fastest team, but Galvantula does help because of its sticky web support. We have a decent remover of hazards here with Terapagos, who gets Rapid Spin. It would be nice maybe if I had another removal Pokemon, so I don't have to bring Terapagos every time to remove the hazards. And because this league also has item clause, you can't just run boots on everything to say, never mind, forget the hazards. Though Pokemon like Clefable can help because they don't need the boots all the time with an ability that makes them immune. Hydrapple Regenerator, you don't always need boots for that either. I like having double wish support with Clefable and Jirachi. I like having tons of options as a rocker, so I definitely don't have to run the same dedicated rocker every time. I think like 4 or 5 of my Pokemon get it. And yeah, I think even my low tier picks, the Wishcash, Knucklestack, and Arbok, do get utility. Some of these guys, I'm struggling to see the utility with some of their low tier picks. It's maybe not the worst thing in the world because like you're definitely going to want to lean on your higher tier, more valuable Pokemon more of the time. But it is good to have options with your low tier picks. I like Wishcash as a rocker and spiker, as you saw from last league. It put in a lot of work. It had one of the most kills on my team. It was either the top or the second to the top. And that's not bad for somebody who made finals. I'm not going to brag too much about that because I lost. But yeah, I mean, so it's definitely a sleeper pick. Knucklestack can definitely force a lot of switches with Salt Cure. And Arbok is a grounded poison type, so it can remove toxic spikes. It also gets Glare, which is a great paralysis move. And this is a team that definitely would like to have some paralysis if you see Jirachi up there with its infamous Paraflinch strategy. But In any case, if you want to hear more about the specific Pokemon on my team and their sort of options and why I picked the Terra types that I did, please watch my other video. Um, and we're just going to move on. With the fifth overall pick, we have the Grafted Grafaiais, retaining their name and their mascot from last week, but having a different logo, which I think is really nice. It's a good logo. The other logo was funny, but not quite as artistic, I'd say. Uh, Maybe the captain of that team would disagree with me, but maybe they wouldn't because they obviously chose to change it. Um, I think you see the top three guys on this team, and it's kind of Jover. Like that top three is offensively really difficult to find a good switch in for. You're gonna have to play a war of attrition against this team because you don't have there's nothing that deals well with Manaphy, Kyurem, and Ogerpon, except for like I don't know, uh, Eternatus. I mean, even that probably doesn't even deal well with those three. But yeah, you're gonna need to find an Uber's Pokemon that to deal with this. Um, Manaphy is one of the most dangerous setup Pokemon in the game. It gets access to Tail Glow and Take Heart. Tail Glow is Nasty Plot on crack, and Take Heart is uh, Calm Mind on steroids. So pretty tough to deal with. Um, it gets great coverage moves too. It gets Energy Ball, which you don't think Energy Ball is that great a move, but when you put it on a boosting Pokemon like Manaphy that mainly attacks with Water type moves, you're gonna appreciate it to help you deal with other Water types. Um, Ice Beam is really solid coverage. I mean, I don't have to explain why Ice Beam is good on a Water type Pokemon for you guys. Um, Kyurem is um, it's a motherfucker. This thing is I like to call it Baxcalibur's dad. Now, it's not strictly better than Baxcalibur. It does have better speed and better bulk for the most part. It has a little less attack. I don't think that matters so much, but I think what really hurts it on the physically offensive side is it doesn't get access to Earthquake or any ground type substitute. Like even her high horsepower would be good, but it doesn't get that either. I don't think it gets Stomping Tantrum. I think your only ground type option is Earth Power, which is a great move if you're running choice specs, but uh, yeah, you're a little limited on your uh, Dragon Dance sweeping utility. Also, Glaive Rush is a great move, and Kyurem does not get Glaive Rush. It gets like Dragon Claw, which is uh, acceptable. Outrage, which is, I mean, not it's not great. I don't want to lock myself into a move that forces Fairy type to switch in and kill me. But um, it is a really scary Pokemon. It can definitely punch holes through a team. It's a great wall breaker. Ogerpon H is very consistent. I love its grass and fire coverage. I also like Mold Breaker on it as an ability, so things like Heatran with Flash Fire can't just switch in and wall you, because in theory it would wall you, but um, yeah, Mold Breaker says no to that. Yeah, really solid Pokemon. U-Turn is a great move, and yeah, Enamorous T is a defensive fairy type. It is pretty solid as well. I do think it's a little passive, especially because it's got like base 29 speed, so it commonly is going to get outsped even by defensive Pokemon that have low speed and no investment. It's still probably going to be slower than them. This is not a team that really can afford to run Trick Room for the most part. Um, so like I don't think you're that you don't get a lot of boons out of your speed in that regard. But it still has pretty strong Moonblast. It still has pretty good bulk, so it can switch into some things. Um, it's it's weak to hazards, or rather, I should say, it's weak to rocks. So um, it might be stealing the boots a lot, which is not great when your hazard remover is Oricorio, who every form of Oricorio is weak to rocks. I guess you have Kamala as well with Rapid Spin, but like it's Kamala. Like it's maybe gonna get the spin off and then it's just gonna die because it's a crapper Pokemon. Uh, I'd love to see you prove me wrong, but yeah, it's not fantastic, but solid. I think I would have liked to see Sylveon on this team actually instead of an AMT, but an AMT's got its use cases. It's definitely, I mean, it gets Earth Power, so that's a good move. Cobalion is a surprisingly high defense fighting type Pokemon. I mean, it's Steel, so I guess maybe you would expect it, but it surprised me a little bit. It's pretty fast too. Um, I think it's pretty solid. It cleans up steel types pretty decent. Although not that you're really struggling to hit steel types with those top three. Um, it's a higher speed tier, I believe, than Manaphy. But it's also not like super duper fast either. These lower tier picks here, you have Pecharunt. Oops, I shouldn't have said that. The Nintendo Ninjas are gonna get me now. Which is a new Pokemon. It's got the same type as Gengar. It's got a crazy signature move, which is Sludge Bomb on super cracked steroids. Yeah, let's go with that. Where it is 100 base power and has a 50% chance to badly poison. And coupled with its signature ability, what is it called? Poison Puppeteer, that confuses Pokemon that are poisoned by Pecharunt. That's pretty insane. It's going to be a really annoying Pokemon, I think. And you're definitely going to want to run something that will blow it up. Now, it doesn't have great stats. It's base 88 and everything, which is kind of mediocre. Like, it's only at like 8 points more than something like Calyrex, for example. And Calyrex is super bad, but I guess it also has a way worse type. But it's got 160 defense, so it's going to eat up those knockoffs, maybe. In any case, it's a weird mon. I don't know how it fits in on this team. I have not played against it, obviously, because it's not released on the ladder. So we'll just have to see how it goes. Rhyperior is a pretty good Terra Captain. I like Dragon on it in particular because it maintains that resistance to both fire and electric, but it also gives you a resistance to water and grass, which you would otherwise be 4 times weak to. Really solid choice. Flying is also good to give you a free turn against somebody who tries to Earthquake you. And Rock is okay. I mean, if you're going to use a stab, Stone Edge could give you an extra damage boost, and that's maybe what you need against certain Pokemon. I mean, the other option is Ground, which could also be pretty good. Rhyperior does get good ground moves, namely Earthquake and high horsepower, but could be good. We have Oricorio here, who is single digits, would be in the Terra Captain range, but we have 3 Pokemon that are Terra banned. It would be Oricorio, Floatzel, and Poltegeist. The reason why we chose those is because we thought they would be way too strong at 9 points as Terra Captains, but we didn't think that they would be worth like 10 points to bring them out of the range. So we just said we'll just Terra ban them and leave them at 8 points. Oricorio is an interesting pick because how we're ruling it is you're allowed to bring whichever type of Oricorio you want. So if you want Pom Pom 1 week and you want Sensu the next week, you totally can just switch up, which gives you a little bit of freedom to choose your team. However, Oricorio, if you remember it from my team last league, it's not super bulky. It's not super strong. It does get Quiver Dance, but because it's not bulky, it tends to die pretty fast, even when it gets the Quiver Dance off. And even its base 93 speed is not super great. Like at +1, it outspeeds some things, but you're still outsped by the really fast Pokemon like Dragapult, um, like Deoxys Speed. I mean, obviously, but uh, and other Pokemon that would get a speed boost. So, it's defog. It's good utility, but the problem with Oricorio as a defogger is it's weak to rocks, and so it's gonna want the boots, and that's gonna suck for if you wanted boots on your Kyurem or your AMT. Um, Kyurem's not the worst though, because it tends to like to run choice specs when it's doing special anyway. So, eh. Grafaiai is a pretty good Pokemon. Like for 6 points, yeah, its stats kind of suck, but I mean it's pretty fast. 110 base speed, I believe. So it can get a gunk shot off pretty quick. But Prankster is a really nice ability. I like Prankster Parting Shot. I like Prankster Toxic. Um, I like Prankster Encore. That's really good. Um, and as a Terra Captain, I think you're if you do see the Sphinctera primarily going to be poisoned to get the extra gunk shot damage, you could maybe see Dark for knockoff. And Bug is, I mean, Bug is a ground resist. I don't think you're taking ground moves that great with Grafaiai anyway, because it's not very bulky. Um, Maybe the idea is that you go Terra Bug to get more damage on your U-turn, but I don't think U-turn is like a super duper great attacking move. It's a great utility move, but not a great attacking move, so I don't know if that's really worth considering. Kamala is kind of just cheeks. It's immune to status though, so it's probably a good Sneasler counter. Yeah, so anyway, let's this is a this is a really good team. I think it's very solid, mostly because of these top three. Like the synergy here could be a little better, maybe. It's not like terrible. But I don't see anything that's like, oh, this totally covers that glaring Ogerpon Heartflame weakness. But then again, Ogerpon Heartflame doesn't really have a glaring weakness. It's got a great dual type. Um, so yeah, I think though if I was gonna say anything though, it is a little slow, this team. Like your fastest Pokemon Grafaiai, I think, or maybe it's Cobalion. I think it's Grafaiai though. Like Grafaiai is not gonna threaten particularly bulky Pokemon or just normal bulk Pokemon unless they're weak to poison. So like even though it is fast, I don't really think it's a huge factor in like contending against high speed Pokemon. So I could see this team getting outsped and taking hits that put him on the back foot. It's a team that needs to keep momentum with good switches, but like these three are just so strong. I think it's not that big a deal. Um, Moving on to the sixth pick, we have the Virbank Complex Construction. This team is all over the place. The person who built this, I think they were going for this like theme team where they have a bunch of construction workers, and or construction tools, I guess, with Rotomo, and building blocks with Garganical, and waste with Alolan Muck and Galarian Weezing. Um, Funny team, that's for sure. But how good is it really? There's not really a strong high value pick on this team. The highest value is Iron Treads for 16, but it's mostly good for utility. Like it's really fast. 142 is a great speed tier, but it's not super strong. Like yes, it's Earthquake and its Iron Head can do decent damage to Pokemon, especially Pokemon that are weak to those, but it's not gonna break through. Uh, say, for example, a bulky grass type like Rillaboom, or a just a solid uh, defensive Pokemon like, well, I guess Ferrothorn's not in the game, so I mean, maybe it gets something done, but I mean, there's a reason why it's UU right now. It's because it's doesn't really have a ton of offensive pressure. It's also a little outclassed by things like Great Tusk, but not everybody can have Great Tusk, so definitely keep that in mind. Probably the next Pokemon on this team that I see is Conkeldurr. Conkeldurr is a pretty good Pokemon. It's got one of the strongest Mach Punches in the game, and it's bulky enough to live a physical hit and throw off a really strong Guts boosted close combat or Facade or Earthquake even. Um, but it's slow, so it's going to commonly get outsped. It struggles to hit fairy types. I guess it does get like Poison Jab and Iron Head, but like those are not great moves. Like, yes, they're super effective, but you're probably not gonna get a KO on most bulky fairy types. Um, and yeah, your special defense is really low, so you're definitely getting KO'd by most Moonblasts. So, it's not great. Galarian Weezing, I think, is another one that is a good Pokemon on this team. I like the Poison Fairy dual type. It absolutely body bags Iron Valiant, for example. Unless, I mean, Iron Valiant could run Psyshock or something to try to give itself options against Galarian Weezing, but Galarian Weezing will more commonly win that matchup than not. Um, it's got great abilities with Levitate to get rid of its ground weakness and neutralizing gas to get rid of your Pokemon's abilities. So I like something like neutralizing gas and defog to be able to like actually get a defog against Goldengo. Now you're gonna take a make it rain back, so maybe that's not the best idea, but like at least Goldengo can't switch in and stop your defog. Um, and I guess I guess I could talk about hazards as well. This team has a lot of hazard setters. Tink, Muck, Weezing, Treads, Garg, Excadrill. Maybe I'm missing one. All can set up some kind of hazard. And it also has a lot of hazard removal because Conk and Weezing both get defog. Treads and Excadrill both get spin. And you even have a spin blocker with Sableye. So that's really good. But like I'm kind of beating around the bush. This team is really slow, doesn't have good offensive pressure outside of like maybe Conk, maybe a Swords Dance Excadrill. You could also say Slacking, but like just run Protect and then Slacking is kind of useless. Um, and like Slacking's a really bad Pokemon when you know it's going to be coming because it's so easy to slap Protect on a Pokemon and stop Slacking from being able to do anything. Um, yeah, you don't really have much in the way of like offensive pressure. A lot of these Pokemon have really overlapping utility. Like Treads and Excadrill they're the same guy. Like they have the same type, they get the same moves. Uh, it's just that Treads is faster and has Cork Drive, which is maybe a better ability. I don't know though, because Mold Breaker is pretty good on Excadrill. It gives it a winning matchup against most Rotom forms. You also could run Sand Rush, but you'd have to set up Sandstorm manually because you don't have Hippowdon or Tyranitar on this team, so maybe you probably don't do that. Yeah, I just don't really see a good win con on this team. So I think it's kind of going to be a struggle. Now, I have not seen this guy play. He was not in our last league. So maybe he's actually cracked and like builds fantastic teams and absolutely will body bag us with this unorthodox team. But I think even if that is the case, you're not giving yourself tons of options to win. So you might still struggle even if you're a great player with this team. But then again, I, I'm open to being surprised. I think uh, it'll be a fun team to see. That's for sure. With the 7th overall pick, we have the Velvet Room, which fits my background music quite well. This team is pretty good, I'd say. Look at Iron Boulder, look at Enamorous Eye. Two Pokemon with good speed tiers and that are really hard hitting on opposite sides of the physical special split. Iron Boulder with its 100% accurate Mighty Cleave and still gets access to CC is a really strong Pokemon. If I have any complaints about it, I think that Psychic isn't the best secondary type. You don't really want to click Zen Headbutt that much. It misses and it's not super high base power. I think it's 85. You would rather have like Psychic Fangs, but you don't get Psychic Fangs. Psyblade would be kind of insane for this thing. That should probably make it broken, but that's okay. You don't really need the Psychic coverage. Rock and Fighting hit a lot of types. Earthquake is a strong move, and you get that too. This is a Pokemon that can use its Cork Drive boost for speed, then click an SD, and now you're like super fucked. So yeah, this is a Pokemon you're definitely gonna have to build for when you see it. Hisuian Zoroark is a good trickster pick. You could oh well, I should have said something else because I was gonna make a Persona joke, but I already called it the trickster. So anyway, I like it. He's running it back with this Pokemon. It worked out decently well for him last time, but it was also his Terra captain. So we'll have to see if losing its Terra affects its usefulness. But it's still a good Pokemon, and I think it's going to work out really well with Pokemon like Chinchino, for example, being that your Zoroark is immune to fighting. Disguise yourself as Chinchino and get a free turn. Could be good. I mean, I think we already talked about it. Thankfully, it's not allowed to Terra because Terra Stellar and Am-I would be really, really insane in this league. But it isn't, so thank God for that. Chinchino is a pretty good Terra captain. It's like Mousehold, where you're going to use that multi-hit normal type move, and you pretty commonly can get that Terra boost to deal really, really good damage against non-resisted hits. Chinchino also gets Bullet Seed, so being Terra Grass could be good. It will struggle to hit Steel types and, well, maybe not Rock types because you have Bullet Seed, but will struggle to hit Steel types and maybe some Ghost types as well. So maybe that's what Ghost is for, so you can turn into a Ghost type, stop those fighting type moves from hitting, but also throw off Terra Blast Ghosts against other Ghost types. So yeah, I don't hate that. I think it's good, and it also gets Tidy Up, so it's a form of hazard removal. And being fast with Chinchino, if you really, really need the hazards gone, like say if there's sticky webs up and you need Iron Boulder to end game for you, you can throw in Chinchino, get the Tidy Up, and just sack it, and that's probably enough to help you win the game. Hisuian Gudra is a good defensive Pokemon. I liked Dragon and Steel as a defensive type, and I like its defensive profile with its pretty high special defense and very, very good HP and regular defense. It also gets access to quite a lot of moves like body press, like heavy slam, your dragon type moves, flash cannon, etc., etc. Um, so it could be a solid mon. Iron Moth is a fraud, um, and I hate that Pokemon, but it is pretty good. It's decent speed tier, pretty strong. Now you have two Paradox Pokemon on this team, so they might be competing for the booster energy a little bit, but you have Pincurchin to help you out. Um, the Cork Drive electric terrain might be good. I don't know. I haven't seen it very much because Pincurchin is pretty ass, but could work. Quagsire's just a solid unaware Pokemon. I think it's not that great though because it doesn't have quite the same stats as like other unaware Pokemon like Skeledirge or like Clefable or Dondozo. Uh, it also has a more exploitable type. People used to say that Water Ground was one of the best types, and yes, I think that it used to be, but with Grassy Glide Rillaboom back back in the game and or added to the game in Gen 8, um, and just the overall power of neutral stab hits going up, I think that Quagsire kind of gets lost in the shuffle and is not a great Pokemon anymore. So, um, maybe it'll provide some utility because it gets spikes, it gets toxic. I think it gets toxic. But otherwise, eh. Cresselia is probably one of the better stored power Pokemon. It can be scary. It's a ground immunity, which is good when you have your offense facilitated through Iron Boulder and Iron Moth. In fact, you have a couple uh, decent ground switching. Well, I guess really it and an AMI. Um, but Ice Cube also take that hit, break the ice face, smash back on that ground type with Ice Spinner. Could be good. Um, and it's kind of a meme pick a little bit, but it could do something. I don't know. Somebody else drafted Alolan Ninetales, so maybe you punish them with your Ice Cube. Who knows? I think this is a very playable team. I like Iron Boulder. I think Iron Moth is in theory good. In practice, I did not like using it, but then maybe that's just me. And AMI is good. Chinchino's pretty good. Your defensive profile is maybe a little questionable. You don't have like a super great defensive guy or two great defensive guys. I guess Gudra and Cress are mainly your two. And Cress does cover for Gudra's weaknesses pretty well, so I think you'll have some some decent utility, decent synergy there. Um, I think this is a good team. Next, we have the 8th overall pick, the Clods, less than 3. Um, I don't know. I guess yeah, you would have less than 3 Clods because you're only allowed to pick one. But this guy, he's got that Ursaluna, and then the rest of them are kind of like middle of the pack type Pokemon. It is good that all of your Pokemon have use cases. Like the reason why they're all in these middle of the pack type tiers is because they do get utility. But I think that they're better suited with stronger, higher value Pokemon, if that makes sense. Like Slitherwing, for example, can deal a lot of damage with its bug and fighting type moves, but like it's very clearly exploitable by fairy types who resist both of those stabs or poison types. So it would be good if you had a Pokemon that dealt with fairies and with poisons really well. Um, I don't know, maybe uh, Iron Treads, for example, could be something that could do that. Um, and you don't have like something like that on this team. You can't really you don't, or even if you did, like they're kind of low power, so like you're maybe gonna struggle. Um, Clodsire I think is a good defensive Pokemon. Um, I think it could fit in decently well with Reuniclus. 'Cause they're both really bulky and they don't share weaknesses. They don't really cover a bunch of different resistances because like Psychic, for example, is not a great defensive type. Um, Talonflame is a good pair up with that. So there is a little bit of a defensive profile, but like Clodsire is fairly exploitable on its physical side. Talonflame is fairly exploitable on its special side. Reuniclus and Hatterene are both pretty good, like on their own, but they also kind of overlap in their roles quite a bit. They both like to be trick room setters and calm mind type guys, or like these uh, physical invested uh, pivots. Now, just they have a couple different roles they could play, and them being able to play the same roles is not necessarily a bad thing. But I think really where it comes down to is that they're both throwing off stab psychics. So if you have something that deals well with psychic types, particularly like steel types, um, then they're really going to struggle to break them. Um, so I don't know if I necessarily like drafting them back to back like that. Um, Your Fire, Water, Grass core, Talonflame, Empoleon, Venusaur, it's okay. They're not. The three of them aren't the best offensive options. Venusaur is a lot better in the sun. You don't have a sun setter. Well, I guess technically some of these Pokemon can set Sunny Day. But like that's a whole move slot investment. That's a whole turn investment, and you're gonna have to switch to Venusaur as well. It could be tough to do that. Um, Goodra, I mean, it's a solid defensive Pokemon. Does its job well. Doesn't apply a ton of offensive pressure, though. And a lot of your really good offensive Pokemon on this team, like Ursaluna and Slitherwing, are fairly slow. Slitherwing's base 81, so it's not super slow, but it's not really fast enough to really get over other teams' fast Pokemon. And you can't really afford to run booster for the speed. You'd have to sack your attack so much that it's definitely not worth it. Um, I don't know. This team is like it's not like the most shit can team you could make. Definitely not. But it's a little low power. Um, you have okay type variety, and some of your roles are decently fulfilled. Like you have Hatterene for not really a hazard remover, but it deters hazards, and Talonflame does get defog. Granted, it's gonna monopolize the boots if you're up against a hazard stacking type matchup, so keep that in mind. Not that your other Pokemon really need the boots, but um, just yeah, definitely keep that in mind. Um, but yeah, I don't think that there's like a super key piece on this team that goes like, oh, this is gonna super sweep and be a great win con, unless Ursaluna Blood Moon can get 2 or 3 Calm Minds off. Um, then it can be definitely pretty scary. But as it stands, I think this is a fairly low power team. I don't think it's unplayable, but I would be surprised if it makes its way far past like your first round of the playoffs, for example. Um, that being said, you can never account for the player. The player might find a way to pilot this team to the moon. So let's go on to the 9th pick, which is our roommate, the Dark Flower Magicians, Ephemeral Baja, maybe you've heard him called, I don't know. This is a team a little bit like my own, where you have a lot of these, but you're concentrated around this 15, 16 point range. Um, and I think it's funny you have like this defensive core of like Garchomp, Heatran, Screamtail. This is similar to the types of teams that I would build. If you remember Screamtail from last league, um, it's pretty solid for me. I do think that you have some good options in here. Meowscarada has a good speed tier. It can be pretty scary potentially, but it doesn't really have great breaking potential. It could run Choice Band, but I think the move that is really going to change the game for Meowscarada is Triple Axle. It's a really good option to hit a lot of Pokemon that gave Meowscarada trouble, particularly Dragon types and other grass types. Um, yes, you had Play Rough, but like Play Rough is eh, whereas Triple Axle will actually fuck up most Dragon types. Latios is a good pseudo breaker. I don't know if I would call it like a hardcore breaker type Pokemon because it's only, I think, base 130 special attack. However, it's fast enough to justify running choice specs. It's also a little too slow to not ever run choice scarf. So you're gonna have to choose between speed and breaking power with this Pokemon a lot, which might get annoying. Heatran is good. It's great, especially defensive kind of Pokemon, but there are a lot of ground types, so keep that in mind. Though Meowscarada can switch into an Earthquake because it resists, and Latios definitely can switch into an Earthquake because it's immune. So that'll help. Screamtail is pretty solid, with support. Uh, Thunderwave spam type guy gets Encore is a good move. Um, Rocks, which you could do either on Screamtail or Heatran, and I like that Meowscarada for spikes. But even better for both of those is Garchomp. Garchomp also could run an offensive set. I think it's better suited as a defensive mon, and as you already have Latios on the team, you don't really need that super fast breaker dragon type. Although I guess it is your best form of ground coverage, so definitely a consideration. I do like Scale Shot on it. It could potentially be really strong. Rabombi is pretty nice. It gets a lot of good utility moves like Stun Spore, but like the name of the game for Rabombi is getting webs up, and then maybe spamming Moonblast. Pretty solid. I called it budget Galvantula, but I mean, I think most people would probably call Galvantula budget Rabombi. Um, these low tier Pokemon are also pretty solid. I like Tentacruel. I think Water Poison's a pretty good defensive type. Grounded Poison type is just good to have. Bulky Water is just good to have, and it's surprisingly fast. I think it's base 100 speed, so it could outspeed some of these like bulky mons and disrupt them a little bit, like with Toxic or a Haze, or get its rapid spin off before it dies. Um, so yeah, it could be good. Emboar is a Pokemon that I think without Terra would be pretty underwhelming. Um, it does get Reckless to boost things like Flare Blitz, Head Smash, etc., etc. Although a Pokemon that relies on like these super high recoil moves is not necessarily the best because they're just going to kill themselves in a lot of cases. Um, that being said, Terra Fire Reckless Flare Blitz is actually kind of insane. Flying is good. It gets rid of your ground weakness and a lot of your other weaknesses. At least they will turn into neutral. And Terra Stellar is, I think, a decent option for somebody like Embor who's going to run a lot of coverage, a fire move, a fighting move, maybe Wild Charge, maybe Head Smash, maybe um, Scald. I actually don't know if it gets Scald anymore, and you probably wouldn't run it on that set, but uh, decent. Dustnor, eh, he's okay. He's like a semi-bulky ground type. Maybe it's going to get utility as a spin blocker. Like you have Rabombi and Garchomp, which are two of the better hazard setters in the game. So that's something. Um, could do like a choice banded Poltergeist or Shadow Sneak, but it's kind of mid. I don't know. Maybe it's going to be good for a particular matchup that I'm not uh, necessarily privy to at this moment. So I'll have to keep an eye on it. Then there's Scrafty. Scrafty is a Pokemon that I think is hurt a lot by its type. Fairy is very common and absolutely destroys Scrafty. So being able to Terra into a Fairy type or a Water type to turn that into a neutral is pretty good, and it's a good specially defensive Pokemon. I like Bulk Up on it to raise the defense as well, and then you become a pretty solid tank. Uh, Drain Punch is good to get your HP back. You can run Rest without Sleep Talk or Chesto Berry pretty reliably because of Shed Skin. It's a pretty good ability for that. Intimidate is also a good ability for it, and if you're running a team that likes to pivot around, this one has some pivoting options. Meowscarada, Latios, for example. We are also allowing Baton Pass for no stat boost. Uh, no stat boost, I guess, unless your opponent gives you a stat boost, and then, well, that's kind of on them. But Rabombi could be pretty solid. Or, I mean, sorry, Scrafty could be pretty solid for this team. We'll have to see. Um, I think that this team maybe is a little lacking in like that one Pokemon that really scares you, but a lot of these Pokemon are super playable and have tons of use cases, except maybe Dusknoir. So you're gonna have to prepare for all of them when you're playing against this guy, and I think that's definitely something that's worth considering. And also, he won last league. He won the finals. He was undefeated in the regular season and playoffs. So he's obviously good enough to get it done. Now we'll see if that was because he was carried by Dragapult. Speaking of getting carried by Dragapult, pick number 10, the Pez Dispensers of Death, piloted by a guy whose literal birth certificate government Christian name is Pez. Uh, that's not actually true, but that I think it's kind of funny that we call him Pez. Anyway, we have Dragapult, Great Tusk, Gouging Fire, Torkoal as the first four Mons. Holy shizay. Tusk, Fire, and Torkoal for a Sun team, pretty strong. Lilligant also getting involved in there, pretty strong. Now I'm looking at the Terra types and I'm thinking, what the hell is Rock? And also, Water's not great either. I probably would have picked along Lilligant's coverage. If you're gonna do like Weather Ball with like Terra Fire, that could have been good. Um, Terra Bug would have been maybe something. You get Pollen Puff. Um, I don't know though. Lilligant is kind of dicks, but it's also on a Sun team, so it's probably not as bad as I'm making it out to be. Uh, in any case, that doesn't matter. Let's those top three are really strong. Dragapult obviously is one of the fastest Pokemon in the game. It's got access to a really good dual stab combination of Ghost and Dragon. It can run physical attacking, it can run special attacking, it gets screens, it gets Will-O-Wisp, Thunder Wave, Hex. Like it's clearly one of the best Pokemon to take in Draft League. It's probably the best or the second best. That it fell to 10th pick is proof that nobody is taking this shit serious. That being said, I like to win with Pokemon that I like to play with, and I don't hate to play with Dragapult, but I don't know. I think it can get a little stale to play with Dragapult all the time, especially when you're somebody who plays ladder. Um, and Dragapult's quite common on the ladder. Uh, so that's why I didn't necessarily want it. And I also think that a lot of people, like as soon as Dragapult gets picked, people are picking their Dragapult counters. Like I picked Clefable, somebody might pick King Gambit. It hasn't been picked yet. And spoiler alert, nobody picked it. It's just kind of insane to me. But there are definitely answers for Dragapult out there. So, um, but yeah, it is really it forces you to build around it. As the opponent, it can fit in really well on any team, uh, if it's on your team. Uh, Tusk is consistent, good spinner. Torkoal also can take spinning capabilities. They both get rocks and spin, so you don't have to run that like a defensive or an offensive spinning set with Great Tusk. You can do bulk up or uh, like a choice band go crazy set with it if you want. Um, which is why I think it pairs really nicely with Torkoal. Last league, the person who picked Great Tusk, like they didn't have another spinner, so Tusk was commonly forced to run that spin, and sometimes you want that move slot for something else. You might be giving up an ice spinner or a knockoff or stealth rocks or something on it because you have to run spin if it's your only spinner. But yeah, Torkoal's there. Gouging Fire as a new Pokemon is really good. I think its dual stab of Fire and Dragon is pretty decent. And it gets a lot of good moves. It's Bulwark, Wall, whatever. It gets Fire type, Baneful Bunker. I think that's pretty solid. Um, and it's also just really good at doing Dragon Dance Scale Shot, which is what we're probably going to see a lot of the time from this. Um, so yeah, gonna be tough to beat those top three. There are definitely Pokemon that can do it. Like for example, Hydrapple. You don't switch in to Hydrapple well. That being said, Hydrapple does not switch into you well. So um, there's a little bit of a give and take there. Rotom Wash is always pretty decent on Sun teams. I know that you're getting less damage out of your Hydro Pumps, but like there are a lot of other fire type Pokemon that might try to take advantage of Torkoal's Sun setting, and Rotom Wash is a good catch-all answer for most fire types. It's a good bulky pivot. I think it's just really solid and consistent, and Will-O-Wisp is a good move, so uh, I like it. Klefki is another solid Pokemon for this team. Prankster support, uh, screens. Screen Sun is insane. Um, Spikes, and believe that this team, there was a fairly common weakness going through these top guys. Well, Ground was one, and Rotom Wash can handle ground types. But I think Fairy was looking pretty threatening, and Klefki is a Fairy type switch in because, obviously Steel resist Fairy. I don't hate that. Good utility, good defensive pick for the team. Um, the rest of the guys here are okay. Galarian Articuno. This is probably the weirdest Terra captain in the entire league. Flying, for Articuno, Galar. I mean, don't you want Freezing Glare to do more damage? Like, what flying type moves are you gonna click? Uh, Maybe Air Slash? I don't know. Terra Fighting, I mean, I guess if you want that really strong Focus Blast, does it get Aura Sphere? I don't know. If it does, maybe that's useful. If it doesn't, I don't like that. And normal? What is normal? I don't know why. Does it get Boom Burst? No way. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's for Hyper Voice. It's a weird pick. I don't think Articuno was a great Terra captain anyway, but uh, with these types, I guarantee we're not gonna see it used very well. Um, Lilligant, yeah, I already talked about how weird its Terra type is, but you know, it's Quiver Dance, it's Sleep Powder, it's Chlorophyll in the sun. So like that's all decent. I think that's worth 6 points. Uh, Orthworm, he's okay. It's another rocker. We're not allowing Shed Tail in this league, so it's but it's ground immunity thanks to Earth Eater, unless you're up against Excadrill, so watch out for that. But decent Pokemon. It's a little passive though. You could run Coil to try to boost up and beat somebody, but I don't think it gets great moves for that. Being pure Steel is not a fantastic offensive type. Steel loves to have something with it, like Fighting or Fairy, um, or Ground. But yeah, being limited to Stab Ironhead is not great. But that's okay because it's kind of a Pokemon that just comes in, gets the rocks, and then leaves and refuses to elaborate. Hisuian Sneasel is a fast Pokemon. It's got some decent moves, knockoff. Um, it does not get Dire Claw, thank God. Uh, and so it might be okay, but it also might be kind of ass. So we'll have to see. I think really these top six are very solid, and Lilligant can switch in, and Orthworm sometimes has utility, so it can be nice. Um, this team's not bad, and I would say it is pretty good. I would maybe make some switches around here with this bottom row of guys to try to synergize a little better with the top, but like as it stands, it's a solid pick. Next, we have Team Zander. We don't have enough anime girl backscalibers, so I'm subjecting you all to this now. Um, this team is okay. Baxcalibur is pretty strong. I think it would have been really, really good with Alolan Ninetales, but I don't see Alolan Ninetales on this team. Um, so I don't know. Hisuian Samurott is one of the best spike stackers in the game, thanks to that ceaseless edge. Um, so I think it's a really solid pick. Gardevoir has good utility. It gets Trick to trick Choice Scarfs away, but it also likes to use the Scarf or Specs. And it's got a pretty strong Moonblast. Not as strong as it used to look in Gen 6, but still pretty strong. Um, Torterra as a Terra captain. Somebody's been watching Pokegame. Um, I think it's going to be solid. The thing about Torterra is with um, Shell Smash, it's still not quite fast enough to outspeed some not super fast Pokemon. Like base 110s are still going to outspeed Torterra even with +2. So I don't love that, but like it has been proven to work. So Um, could be good. Hawlucha is usually a solid Pokemon if you can get its Unburden off, but you don't have like any terrain to use a seed for it, and you don't have any you don't really have any other form of getting its item off unless you're using like White Herb with its close combat. But doesn't Torterra kind of want the White Herb? And doesn't Poltegeist sometimes want the White Herb? This is weird. It's like the only team that you would see that wants White Herb on more than one Pokemon. And the fact that we have item clause to stop that is kind of strange. Um, Scissor's good. It's good pivot. Gets defog. Just good. Um, Chandelure. Supposedly Chandelure was a really good Pokemon, like too good to Terra, in some people's opinion. We are allowing it to Terra, but our guys, Zander here, is not making use of that. I think I agree that Torterra is a worthy option, um, because Chandelure is kind of slow. Like base 80 is not that good. Um, it also kind of wants the boots if it's not choiced. It's okay. Base 145 is nothing to scoff at with the special attack, but um, you can kind of exploit some of its inconsistent fire type moves like Fire Blast and Overheat to mitigate its effectiveness a little bit. Uh, in conjunction with Charizard, like I just don't see what you would do with both Chandelure and Charizard. I think you're definitely maybe should consider switching one of them out if you're looking at free agency. Because I just again if you bring them Charizard wants the boots, uh, so you can't run boots on Chandelure. Plus you don't want to run them together because they're both special fire type attackers, and like one's I think Chandelure's gonna typically be better because its secondary stab of Ghost is a lot better than Charizard's of Fire, or sorry, Flying. Though Charizard does get decent coverage, it can run physical, and it gets, I mean, it's faster. It's base 100 speed. So there are reasons to use Charizard over Chandelure, but not that many, not enough that I would justify putting them both on the same team. Toxtricity is okay. I mean, gets some pretty strong moves like Boom Burst and Overdrive and Sludge Wave. It's a solid Pokemon, but it's somewhat exploitable. It does not deal well with ground types, so keep that in mind. And Poltegeist is another one of those single-digit Terra Band Pokemon. Like its Shell Smash would make it really good if it could Terra out of its somewhat exploitable Ghost type. It's not the Ghost is not the best defensive type. It's got weak armor though to also to further boost its speed. It's going to be a really strong Pokemon with Focus Sash. So definitely get the hazards up if you're facing this guy. And its stored power is going to be really strong. Actually, looking at this team, Indeedee would be pretty good with it. Yeah, I know that like Bax, Samurott, and Scizor do like to throw off their what's it called priority moves, and Psychic Terrain blocks priority moves. But like Poltegeist would love to block priority moves and boost its stored power. Hawlucha would love to get Psychic Seeds and get its Unburden boost. Gardevoir could be pretty good in Psychic Terrain. Um, I think you could even look at if you wanted to restructure away from Chandelure and Charizard, you could even look at picking up something like Armor Rouge, which works really well in Psychic Terrain. And you have another Pokemon there with weak armor who could exploit people who just mindlessly attack into you. Um, could be solid. Um, That being said, the team as it is right now is workable. It's not super great. I think it's lacking in defensive prowess. Like if I'm like say uh, Dragapult, who are you gonna switch into? You're gonna have to guess whether I'm doing Shadow Ball or uh, Draco and go between Samurott and Gardevoir. You might be able to do Scizor if it's a type of Pokemon that Scizor resists. Um, but like as it stands, I just don't see a lot of great defensive pivots. I also just don't see a hazard remover other than Scizor, right? So, I mean, it's not bad actually as a hazard remover, but sometimes you want to use Scizor to do something else like Swords Dance Up. So, could be a problem for you. It's an okay team. And with the last pick of the draft, we have the Treek 30s. They have Deoxys Speed, who right now there's a big debate on whether Deoxys Speed is too broken for OU or not. I tend to think it's not that broken. Like, it is really fast, obviously. Really hard to outspeed it. Like, they're just some Pokemon will run Scarf and they just still can't hope to catch Deoxys Speed, even if Deoxys Speed isn't fully invested, which is kind of insane. But Dio Speed has middling defenses. Like, not its base 90 somethings are okay, but its base 50 HP, so it's not super bulky. In fact, I would say it's pretty frail. Psychic is not a great offensive or defensive type, especially with all the knockoff running around. Um, but Psycho Boost is a great move, so that's something. It can run mixed sets, but or rather, I should say, a special set that uses superpower. So it's all right, and then it's also got utility with spikes and taunt and stuff like that. However, I don't know if I love the idea of Pokemon I'm investing 18 points in to come in and basically be a suicide spikes lead. Um, like there are lots of 6-point Pokemon or lower who could do that for you. So I think I'd rather save my 18 pointer for something that is like a crazy wall breaker that you're just not going to find at low value. That being said, I think TO speed is pretty solid. Um, Worth 18 points? I don't know, but probably worth building a team around. Raging Bolt, new guy, also kind of scary. Thunderclap is a great priority move. Its dual stab is fairly good offensively. Um, and yeah, it's 137 special attack is good. It's a decent Calm Mind guy. Uh, Iron Crown is also a Calm Mind guy who's weak to ground, and I don't know if I would put them both on the same team if I were me, which I am me, so I wouldn't. But uh, they're both decent. Iron Crown, like I struggle to find how good it is because it tends to run like Calm Mind, uh Stored Power Tachyon Cutter type thing. So similar to like Jirachi, but Jirachi gets I think better coverage moves, can run different sets more reliably, and also has access to Wish to heal itself, where I don't think Iron Crown has any recovery. So like I mean, of course, I'm biased for Jirachi, but I don't know if Iron Crown is necessarily a great option. I'm willing to be surprised, though. Ceruledge, I think, is a good Pokemon, but this is just another Pokemon that's weak to ground. Look at the top four. Like, you have Deoxys Speed, who doesn't want to take Earthquakes, really, and then the other three are weak to Earthquake. So, I don't really like that. Ceruledge can be strong, of course. I like its priority moves. Like, this is a team that has pretty good speed control because of all its priority moves and because of Deoxys speed. But it's also, again, a team that just gets ripped apart by strong Earthquakes, which Earthquake is one of the easiest moves to click in the game. There's a lot of Pokemon that get it, so I don't understand why you wouldn't try to mitigate your weakness to it. In any case, Alola Ninetales, Aurora Veil guy, pretty good. I think it would be nice if you had a Slush Rush Pokemon, though. Like, I don't know who you would pick. Titan. You could pick Titan, and it's a Terra Captain, so a potential Terra Captain, I should say. Um, Bax would have been really nice with this team. I mean, clearly, the Treat 30s couldn't pick it because it got picked right before him, but the Team Zander could have picked Alola Ninetales a lot earlier than the Treat 30s, and I think that would have suited him really well. As it stands, Alola Ninetales is not a bad pick. Aurora Veil can make some pretty mid Pokemon decent because it effectively doubles their survivability. It is going to be really good for a Pokemon like Frostmoth, who's getting a double defense boost, and Ice Scales, and is a Terra Captain who can switch out of its terrible type. Now, granted, if it switches out of Ice, it's going to lose that defense boost. I kind of am of the opinion that you should have been Terra Ice instead of Terra Bug, but I don't know. Maybe Bug hits a lot of things that I'm not seeing. I don't know. Ground is a great defensive Terra type for Frostmaw. Also a good offensive Terra type because that Terra Blast Ground plus Ice Beam is going to hit a lot of types. You also have you also do have grass type options on it. I think it gets Giga Drain and Energy Ball, so that's going to be great coverage. And water is just a solid defensive Terra type. Your Ice Scales is going to help you out against a lot of electric type moves that would be coming your way, and well, the grass types, as long as you don't Terra immediately in front of them, you're going to scare them out. You also might just scare them out with your strong ice type moves, and with a Quiver Dance, this Pokemon is going to be pretty strong. That being said, you have to have boots on this guy. Like, it's non-negotiable. So that means you're not going to be able to have boots on Ceruledge, which is going to mitigate one of its stronger sets, like its Endure, uh, weak armor type set. Um, so yeah, there's also, I mean, Dio Speed doesn't mind boots either because it doesn't want to get chipped. Uh, Some of these lower tier Pokemon like Drifblim would like the boots because it's your only hazard removal, and it's weak to rocks, so you don't want it to keep taking so much damage from Stealth Rocks every time it has to switch in to get rid of the rocks. So Frostmoth is a very interesting Pokemon to build a team around. I think as a Terra Captain, it's going to be pretty strong. So we'll see how it goes. I'm excited to see if it puts in work. Sceptile is an okay Pokemon. It's got Unburdened, so if you do something like get rid of my item plus Acrobatics, that and Terra Flying, that could be good. I don't know what you're going to get rid of its item with necessarily. Maybe Blunder Policy? It has some inaccurate moves. I don't know. You get the extra, that extra speed. It gets Scale Shot, so you could run like White Herb, get your speed boost, get your extra speed boost on Burden. It'd be the fastest Pokemon in the tier, and then you can Terra Flying for stronger acrobatics. That being said, I don't think Sceptile is that strong. It doesn't. Stats aren't great other than its speed, and Grass is not a great typing either. Fairy, I don't like it really. Like, I understand like you want a defensive fairy type, but Sceptile's defenses are not great, and it's also like weak to poison no matter what. If you're committing to Terra Fairy, so I don't know if I love it. It could be decent though. Araquanid, I think, is a pretty solid Pokemon. Water Bubble's a great ability, and Sticky Webs is a great option. It, uh, as a Terra Captain, it could have been really interesting with like Terra Water stacking with Water Bubble, doing a ton of damage, but I'd be remiss to say that Frostmoth isn't just the better of the two if you're going to pick a Terra Captain, and you can't afford to do both. So, uh, and I think that Araquanid functions decently well without Terra, so uh, I like it. It's a ground resist. I guess technically Frostmoth and Sceptile and Driftblim and Toadscrew are all ground resist, but like that's the problem with these like low tier guys is because their stats are so much lower and they tend not to have the good like great defenses. They're not going to be great at patching up your defensive weaknesses. So I don't know. I understand you need those ground resists, but like saving them all for these low tier guys, I don't think is the best strategy. It would have been nice if you had like I don't know, Zapdos or something. I guess Zapdos already picked. I don't know what you would do with free agency. A defensive flying type Skarmory in your top five could have been interesting. Would have given you spike support that's on something other than Deoxys or Totoscrool. So it could be something worth looking into. Um, yeah, Driftblim. Driftblim's sneaky good. I like its unburdened. I like its. I also don't mind its aftermath. Um, it's got really good HP and very serviceable special defense. It's a little lacking in the defensive category, but it has Will-O-Wisp and Strength Sap to help it out. It gets Defog. It's good utility. The Bulking Balloons last league put in some pretty decent work with Driftblim. It didn't maybe get a lot of kills, but it had a ton of utility, so I thought it was really nice. And I don't hate it for this team. Totoscrool, eh, it's Ice Week. It's pretty mediocre. I guess it gets Spore, but it's a slow Spore. Yeah, I guess you have Rapid Spin on Totoscrool, so you're not like forced to bring Driftblim every game to remove the hazards. But Totoscrool is not like the most fantastic spinner because its defensive type is weird. It's not great. It's actually not a bad offensive type, as you'll maybe see with that Shelf Smash Torterra. And I like that it gets like Earth Power, Energy Ball, stuff like that. But despite being decently fast, like a base 100, I don't see it doing much. It's not a bad Pokemon, but it's mid. And yeah, I mean, obviously you're gonna have some mid Pokemon in this low tier range, but it's got utility. Maybe I shouldn't shit on it too much. I think that this team is not really well balanced. This like my thing. You don't have a lot of good defensive guys in your top four, and you don't have a lot of like you you have some in your bottom like five or so, but I don't know. I can't really explain exactly all the things I'm not a fan of on this team, but I just think it's the balance is off on it. Um, it's going to be heavily reliant on your halfway decent uh, offensive guys. I mean, actually, some of them are really good. Shouldn't try to sell it short, but you're gonna struggle to switch into earthquakes, and like you're gonna have these like you're gonna have to use these low tier guys as defensive options when that might not always be the best thing for them. So yeah, it's just a little unbalanced. Finally, I'm gonna show power rankings. So I did my power rankings based on how I felt each of these teams would perform. I did not take into account how good I think the players are. Um, Not because I don't think that matters. I think clearly it does, but um, I I didn't want it to be mean and hateful on like people who played. And some of these guys I haven't seen them play Pokemon before, so I don't know how I would factor them in. Um, so I'll go ahead and show you that right now. I've got them ordered in 1 to 12 by their team name. My roommate, who's piloting the Dark Flower Magicians, also made his power ranking, so maybe we're not going to have too much of my bias as a factor. We both agree that the VCC is the weakest of the teams. Um, Not like it again, it's not like the a super duper terrible team, but it's just really low power. There's not a lot of offensive pressure, so it's going to be tough. We have the Clods at number 11. Again, not like a super duper terrible team, but we think it's just kind of slow, and you don't have super duper powerful Pokemon. So, like people can afford to just prepare for maybe Blood Moon and Slitherwing and get away with it because the rest of the team is not like uber threatening. Um, they're my first matchup of the league, so we'll see how that goes. We have Team Zander both at number 10. I think it's probably due to its lack of defensive utility on the team. Um, does it have a hazard remover? Sorry, where is it? It was a late round pick. Yeah, it has Scizor, right? Um, so mm, not like a fantastic team. Could be better. I think with free agency, there are some trades you could make to make it better. I think Indeedee would shoot you up quite a bit. We have a disagreement on the Treek 30s and uh, the WNBA here. Um, I think the Treek 30s is a little lower, and I explained a lot just recently about like I think its defensive utility is really poor. Um, I think ephemeral values its ability to remove hazards a little more than the WNBA's. I think the only hazard removal it had was Cinderace Court Change, which is not. It is nice that if your opponent sets up 3 layers of spikes, you can just throw them back to the opponent on one turn. But you're not getting rid of the hazards. You're just moving them, and the opponent can always stack more hazards on you. So it's not like the most consistent. It's still a good move. Don't get me wrong, but um, not great consistency. We both have Velvet Room and Dark Flower Magicians 7 and 6. I think they're both pretty well balanced teams. They both have some threats. I think we both agree that the Dark Flower Magicians have a little bit more flexibility. Um, Pokemon like Meowscarada can allow for uh, other Pokemon to see the field in a somewhat safe manner because of like U-turn and stuff like that. But don't count out the Velvet Room. They've got Iron Boulder and an AMI, which are great Pokemon. I could see them punching above their perceived weight class and getting some upsets over some of these teams that we both kind of agree are a little better. Um, so, uh, like, yeah, you might be in the bottom half of each of our power rankings, but I think it's still a pretty solid team. Um, I have myself at 5 just because, well, who's that on Steam? I guess we're leaking our Steam friends' playing habits here. Um, anyway, I have myself at 5. I don't feel like I have a super strong breaker on my team, and the speed is a little suspect. Um, but uh, Ephemeral puts me at 2. Um, I believe he thinks that my flexibility on my team, with a lot of Pokemon being able to run a lot of different sets, is very valuable, and it's got one of the best defensive cores with that Jirachi, Clefable, Hydrapple. Um, so there's probably going to be a lot of consistency on my team, which is nice. I like that. I want to have a more consistent team. Um, that being said, I thought that some of these other teams had stronger peaks, like for example, Big White Cookie with its um, Iron Valiant and Palafin is going to be really hard to switch into, even for a team that has a really good defensive core like mine. I think I'm gonna struggle a little bit to get my Pokemon in good positions versus those guys. I'm gonna have to get some plays right in order to succeed in that matchup, and so are a lot of other teams. But we all agree that the Big White Cookies maybe not quite as saucy as the Grafted Grafaiais, the Pez Dispensers. Um, Again, not a bad team. Definitely, I would say in the top half, and deserving of that. But um, there's maybe not a great auxiliary offensive type for those, or offensive Pokemon for that team. Metagross is probably the next best guy after those top two. Um, but those top two are really strong. So yeah, for those alone, it's probably gonna be up here, and it's got a decent defensive profile, a lot better than some of like the bottom teams. Like the bottom 5 teams are questionable on their defenses a little bit, whereas the Big White Cookies, it's not stellar defensively, but it's also not bad. It's definitely workable. I like Tanglu and Moltres. They're both pretty good. Um, Grafted Grafaiais, I put them at number 2 because that top 3 is just super threatening, and the rest of the team is also decent. I guess Ephemeral values the Sun synergy a lot better on the Pez Dispensers team. Um, totally fair. Um, I can see an argument for it. I still think I like the consistency of the Grafaiais a little better. I know that they've got a little bit of a speed issue, but I think that's well mitigated by the fact that with some boosts, you're gonna shit your pants against them. Um, and the Pez dispensers, there's a little bit of some weakness on certain types. Like you don't have a glaring fairy weakness, but a lot of your Pokemon take neutral or super from fairy, um, and aren't necessarily don't necessarily have great recovery options like recover or roost. So like that's something I could see as a concern for them. But choice banded attack boost, uh, Great Tusk and Dragon Dance gouging fire, and your argument is quite invalid there. Um, we both agree that the January Sixers have the most insane team. If you were gonna tier these guys, I would say you could probably put 2 through 5 in their own tier. Um, 6 and 7 maybe exist in their own tier, and then like the bottom guys kind of, or the bottom 5 are in their own tier, and January Sixers is just head and shoulders above everybody else. It is a fantastic team, great synergy, lots of really strong threats, good speed tiers. You have hazard removal, you have hazard stacking, um, you have very consistent defensive mons like Gliscor and Corviknight, and you even have like little niche options like Spidops to get up sticky webs, and like maybe that's just maybe you just need a little bit of web support, and then boom, you're solid. I mean, you don't even really need it. It's good to like throw webs against another team that has webs, like my team, or like the Dark Flower Magicians, or like the Shriek 30s who have options to sticky web. Um, yeah, no, that's a really solid team. If I had that team and I lost this league, then I was a fraud. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna put all the pressure on our boy Jeff to pull through because yeah, that's a fucking sick team. Um, well, we're about 2 hours in, and I've covered everything I need to cover. Definitely, if you want to hear more about my team, watch the video that I did specifically for my team. I will be coming out with my first battle of the league pretty soon, maybe later this week. Um, Probably not before the new year. If you're watching this right now, Happy New Year's. If you're watching it later, I hope 2024 has been a good start for you. Um, and we will see you guys next time.